Hey besties, it's Sarah, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite books of 2021. This is one of my favorite videos to film because I feel like I'm quite a critical reader. So when I do like a book, it's on. Like, I want everyone to read it because I liked it, and that's a rare occurrence because I rate most books like 3 stars and under. And so if something gets 4 or 5 stars from me, you should be on the lookout. Like, you should be like, what did Sarah like about that? Unless of course you have completely opposite reading taste from me. So in that case, don't listen to these recommendations at all. Before we get started, I do want to recognize that I feel like I'm currently giving you like a green wench fantasy. I feel like my bosom is heaving in this dress and everything is green, like my wall, my headband, my dress, even my phone case, like everything's green right now. I kind of love it. Green is like one of my favorite colors, so I'm living for it. This is just a lot of cleavage right now, but it's fine. It's because this dress is really tight. I feel like, whew, you know, I'm just really living that medieval fantasy. Anyway, I digress. Let's get into this list. I think as of today, I've read about 65 books this year, and I have 7 that I want to share with you. These are the books that particularly stood out to me. I had a few honorable mentions that I didn't end up putting on this list. Maybe I'll talk about them another time. But as of right now, we got 7 books, and let's just get into it. Number 1 is No Exit by Taylor Adams. So in No Exit, we have a girl. I literally can't remember her name. I feel like she had one of those names that was like a boy name, but it was also a girl name, or maybe like a surname, but like as a first name. I don't really remember. I'm gonna put it on the screen. But she's driving in a snowstorm because her mom's in the hospital and she needs to get to her quickly. But because it's snowing so hard, she ends up having to stop at this rest stop. So she goes into this rest stop, and at this rest stop, I just said the word rest stop way too many times. Oh, Darcy! Her name's Darcy, I think her name was Darcy. Future Sarah, let me know if I was right. But anyway, she walks in. I'm gonna call her Darcy for the sake of this video. So when Darcy arrives at this rest stop, she sees this weird group of people. She doesn't really want to make friends. She decides to go outside to try to make a phone call to her sister. The service isn't really great, but she wants to like check in with her sister about her mom. And while she's in the parking lot, she sees in this van window this little handprint that's like a child. And she finds out that this child has been abducted and is in one of the cars, but she doesn't know who the car belongs to. So basically the rest of the novel is her trying to like figure out like who kidnapped this kid and like what's going on. It is like a really like fast-paced thriller. Like, it's a really fun book. Now let me say, is it the greatest piece of literature? Like, is it writing that's just gonna make you like be moved? No. Is it like one of the funnest books I've ever read in my life? Yes. Like, I think it should be a movie immediately. Like, the way I read it was like a movie. You do have to suspend your belief a little bit. Like, there are some scenes where you're like, IRL, she would be dead. I just feel like it's the most thrilling thriller I've ever read, if that makes sense. Like, most thrillers like have an like element of suspense. You want to know who did what. But in this one, like, we already know that this girl's been kidnapped, and we're just trying to like process of elimination, like figure out who in this rest stop did it. And there's just like so many hijinks that ensue, and it just gets like so off the rails, but in such a fun way. I think this would be a great book if you were in a reading slump and you were looking for something really fast-paced, like really exciting, that would just make you feel something again. I highly recommend this. Like, I just loved it. I loved it. And I am not the first person to say this. I feel like this is a pretty popular thriller that people have recommended, and I totally understand why. The next book on my list is actually 3 books, and that is the Daevabod trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. These books center on a girl named Nari. When we first meet her, she is a con woman living on the streets of 18th century Cairo. She has healing abilities, and she uses these to kind of dupe people out of their money just so she can survive because she's an orphan. And a few things happen in the beginning of the book where she accidentally calls upon these demons, and so a djinn has to come and save her. And so she's whisked off to this city called daevabod, and she kind of discovers the world of being a djinn. This is a book that I've seen a lot of people put on their TBRs, but not quite that many people read. And I do think it has some mixed reviews. Like, some people read it and think it's boring and like not worth continuing the series. I don't read a lot of high fantasy these days. Like, I feel like I stick with mostly like romance and thrillers, and I never ever binge fantasy series, because these 3 books are like really hefty. Like, they're very long, and I binged all 3 of them in 2 weeks. Like, I was obsessed. Like, I could not put them down. I loved the world building, I loved the political intrigue, I loved the characters. So to kind of end my thoughts on the Daevabod trilogy, it's probably one of the best series that I personally ever read. That is my humble opinion. I really enjoyed it. I'm not reading a lot of fantasy these days. I don't really know why, because I really like fantasy. I think I want to get back into it as a genre, but it's just something that requires a lot of thought power and a lot of like understanding the world building, and I just kind of haven't been in the mood for that in a long time. But I really enjoyed this series like so much. The next book on my list is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This is a friends to lovers romance by the same author who wrote Beach Read, which was one of my favorites from last year. And in this book we have Poppy and I think a guy named Alex. I don't remember his name. I'm really bad at names. But Poppy and Alex have been friends since college, and all through college, Poppy's always been really interested in travel, and so Alex is a little bit more reserved, and so she makes him go on all these like crazy fun vacations where they go to other countries and they try to do it on a budget, because like Poppy's dream is to be a travel blogger. And throughout the years, like every summer they go on a trip, and then one summer something happens that we don't know about until much later in the novel, and they have a falling out. And so a couple of years go by, and now Poppy is like a very famous travel blogger. She's working for a magazine, and she realizes that she is not happy. Even though she's achieved all her dreams, she's not happy. And so she's like, what can I do to be happy? And she realizes that the last time she felt anything good was when she was with Alex on their last trip. And so she kind of reaches out to him and is like, hey, can we rekindle our friendship? Can we go on another trip? And that is where the story like kind of takes off. I feel like friends to lovers is a trope that we're all sleeping on. Like in the past, I've always been like, oh, enemies to lovers, I love that. No. Friends to lovers is where it's at. To see a wholesome friendship slowly but surely turn into love, there's nothing like it. Because honestly, that's the kind of thing that I actually feel like would be fun in real life, versus like enemies to lovers is like fun to read about, but it would be kind of like toxic in real life. But like friends to lovers is just like so wholesome and sweet and kind of sexy too. So I really enjoyed this. I love the characters, I love the writing. I just feel like Emily Henry is writing romance the way the other girlies are not. Like it's just, she has a way where it's like just so good. It's just so good. The next book on my list is Hench by Natalie Walschots. No. It's Natalie Zina Walschots. That's just like a tongue twister of a name. I'm very sorry for butchering your name. But essentially this is a story where in this world, superheroes and supervillains are kind of like run everything. And our main character is a hench. So that means she works through like a temp agency, and she kind of gets like assigned to go work with different supervillains depending on their needs. She typically works like office jobs where she does like data entry for these villains, but one day she gets assigned to actually go on site for something, and she ends up getting really intensely injured by a superhero. And so it's sort of her like villain origin story and how she comes to hate superheroes. It reminded me a lot of The Boys from Amazon Prime. If you've ever seen that show, it's also a, I think, graphic novel. I personally haven't seen a lot of books that explore these themes of kind of discussing like what would it really be like if superheroes existed and how they would like wreak havoc and hurt people. And I just thought it was a really fun book. I think it's super underrated. The only person I've ever seen talk about this book is Riley from Riley Marie. That's honestly why I picked it up, because she talked about really liking it in a vlog. And I really hope that the author writes more books in this series. Like the way it ended, I definitely feel like it's open for more. And yeah, I don't know. It's just like, if you like superheroes, but you almost like would rather see like a villain story, this would be like a great read for you. Next we have They Never Learn by Layne Fargo. This is a, I would say, like thriller about a college professor named Scarlett who essentially murders rapists. But this school year, people are starting to get suspicious and they're starting to connect the various deaths that have happened. And so it's all about her trying to figure out how to like outsmart the people who are looking into it. There's also another perspective of a college freshman who is sort of experiencing how predatory men can be for the first time. And so it kind of juxtaposes the college freshman experience with Scarlett's more jaded experience, where she's literally like murdering these bad men. And so it's really a fascinating read. I absolutely loved it. I love books that are kind of like where you root for the bad guy. I guess that's kind of like why I like Hench too. Like I just really enjoy when you feel like someone is justified in being bad and you get to like read it and it's like a little wicked and fun. Like I really enjoyed it. I feel like this is like Promising Young Woman meets Dexter. And next we have True Crime Story by Joseph Knox. This is actually an extremely recent read. Like I think I literally read this like 4 days ago. It was just so good that I immediately was like, this needs to be on my favorites of the year list. It's kind of hard to explain, but it is a fiction, non-fiction book. So it's written from the perspective of Joseph Knox, as if he was a nonfiction writer writing about this crime that's happened. It's kind of like Daisy Jones, but make it a true crime podcast. And I would really compare it as well to Sadie by Courtney Summers. If you liked that book, I think you'd like this. So in this book, Joseph Knox is like writing about this girl named Zoe Nolan who went missing 8 years prior in Manchester, England, and she went to a party with her friends and then they just never saw her again. The way he wrote it was just so clever because he really made it feel so real that I had to Google, is this a real true crime story? Because it says novel on the cover, but he wrote it just so clever. Like the author is also in the book. It's very meta, but I really, really, really enjoyed it. Like if you enjoy full cast audiobooks, like I highly recommend this. I don't think that this would be a particularly good physical read. Like this is one of those ones where I'm like, I don't know why the physical book would even exist, because it's just so much more enriching to hear all the voices of all the different characters. And also it's literally like conversations, like they're just telling you outright, even the emails. Like there's little bits where Joseph Knox like writes like narrative where like as if he like if you were reading the nonfiction book, like him narrating what happened leading up or whatever. The last hour of this audiobook, I had tears in my eyes because I was so like on edge trying to figure out like who did what. Like it's so good. Lastly, we have In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This has been kind of a divisive book. I feel like people either love it or they really don't like it because they think it's overhyped. I am in the former category where I'm like on the hype train. I'm actually driving the train. I am the conductor, like hype. As some of you may know, I am an audiobook bitch. Like I don't often physically read books. I actually did get a Kindle for Christmas, so I'm trying to read more physically that way. But I just find that I enjoy listening to books while I'm driving or doing chores, like playing like mobile games or whatever. Like I just enjoy doing two things at once. And so I feel like sitting down to like slog through a physical book is just not, okay, slog through is dramatic. I do like physically reading. I enjoy physically reading. That's where my love for reading was born. But in recent years, I just feel like I've become like a busy, weird adult that like likes podcasts and prefers audiobooks. What I'm trying to say is that this book did not have an audiobook. And if I wanted to experience it, I had to take my ass down to my public library and check it out so I could read it. Because I saw like 3 people talking about it. I think Kayla from Books and Lala said it was like one of her favorite thrillers of the year. And I feel like she is like the thriller bitch, like she knows what's up. This story follows a group of college friends and it's all about them becoming friends, like being a really close-knit group, and then one of them getting murdered and them not knowing who did it. And then there's also a timeline of them 10 years later going to a reunion. I think it's 10 years, don't quote me on the number, but it's like many years later they go to this college reunion and it's sort of like a whodunit, like which of us was the one that actually murdered our friend. I loved this. It had like a dark academia feel. It was filled with unlikable characters, but I personally liked that. Like I've heard some other reviewers say everyone was unlikable, but not in a good way. And I agree, but I think it was in a good way. I feel like the hype is worthwhile, but obviously there's people that disagree. So kind of like take my opinion with a grain of salt and compare it to maybe some other reviewers. In conclusion, you should read these books because my opinion is good. And that's why you're here. I'm just kidding. If you don't want to read these, don't read them. But if you do want to read them, you should read them. And that's how free will works. Let me know down below what your favorite books of 2021 were. I would love to do a video, maybe reading like my subscribers' favorite books. Maybe we can get that going. I could do like a little bit of a reading vlog. I did get a new camera. I apologize if the audio or the visual is like weird at all. I got a Canon G7X so that I can do vlogging. This bitch is trying to feed everyone in 2022. I'm trying to be a YouTuber again. But thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. I forgot my own outro for a second. Thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day.